Let it go. Maybe I should have a plus.
Het is wel donker. Het is wel donker. Hoe is het donker bij je?
Ini sih lah.
Ja man. Ik voel een man dag nooit
Ada
bij.
pas dua. Ayo lah.
Hah?
Ada pas dua.
Nee, saya ini.
Siapa lagi?
Asian 40 guy me bro.
Satu lagi juga. Lain bro mau ya? Kami makan.
Lolly. Hij loopt nog op mezelf, ja. Maar bro, als ik kies, als ik van, maak ik mij toch man. Een stuk wil kiezen, zo. En anders ga je van, oh vast, oh papi. Ik vraag niet man, ik vraag niet man. Paar keer vraag, nu kom je. Ja, veel man aan van jaren, maar zelfs nu ook bespreken. En jaren praten, dat weer iets maakzaam joh. Je kan beseffen dat hoe je kan worden man. Worden is moest dan als je kan doen met bro. Ze wil full.
Hoe kan mij dat bedenken?
Ja.
Berapa menit? Dari
Papier van baumkeren.
ada bisa lah dan.
Wat?
Pam? Sudah dan.
Papier van.
Wat is dat? Wat is het?
Wat baumkeren bereiken?
Hah?
Wat de baumkeren bereiken?
Bam?
Ja, maar wat de brain.
Wah, betul. Ya, itu lah. Itu kan. Harus pakai.
Niet binnen het hè.
Mau nak banan sih. Tomorrow.
Ja, terug kan je daar.
Ik kan niet vastlaan.
Nee, Ibrahim is komen afwas. Misschien ze bloedjes of zo zien.
Nou, hoe kom je die doen zo lang dan nou is?
Het is iets anders ding. Je ziet me niet die vast. Het is plastic ding. Gewone plastic.
Ja, maar bedoel, hoe kom je zo lang toe?
Want hij is gemaakt om zo die longevity van 7 dagen. Hij is gemaakt voor dit.
Die soort titel.
Die soort sticker.
Zo als je, nou als je die stickers dat je de jokken zet.
Ik zei wanneer ik het
Ik maak het voor de.
ook 7 dagen.
Je gaat ook nog steeds iets spoilen. Alles dat je op.
Nee, dat is wel. Hij heeft mijn eigen cream gebruikt het al.
Dat is dat.
Ja, elke weer dag.
Dat is gezond. Nu moet je ook voelen. Lekker weten hoe je het doet.
Huh?
Lekker weten hoe je het doet.
Niet zo veel.
Zo dieren kan je kunnen misschien wel allemaal. Maar we zullen nog zien.
Nee, dan moest je weer dan moeten.
Die is dat zo.
Ja, dat is gewoon ook.
Er zit mooi strepen.
Ja. Game changer ja. Al kratten, niet kratten. Oh, te kratten. Stroom ja. Krappen is een joh. Huh? Een chick. Maar ik denk dat ik nou een chick. Ik ben de knaap van hem.
Masih sama sama orang. Sini. Masih sama. Mungkin satu kenal sini. Teksi masuk mana? Mesti ada apa? Mana? Ini apa sih?
Maar je moet even zien. Zeg van nou, op forceer maken. Om eigenlijk te doen.
Zeg zo. Hij niet zeggen, maar is mogelijk.
Nee, ik zei, ga je zo zeggen, van die dingen zie je wat dan, één keer lang. Ik heb gezegd, een wink gemaakt, een wink. Of skat gezegd, zoals hij zingt. Nu zeg je niet. Jo, het lijkt ik het nou iets anders gedaan worden.
Ja, alleen jij dat doen.
Jo, ik zie het moest niks zien, joh.
Gewoonlijk is maar zo'n mens, een type mens.
Ja, maar dan is ik verstaan wat ze zeggen. Als er een verschil is tussen jullie twee, zo andere mensen en zij. Ik weet niet wat allemaal, dat zien we zo daar zijn. Zij moet speciaal is.
Dat is zo. Maar dat is
waar het. Nee, we hebben het ingeschreven. Maar sometimes zij is man interpret het iets zo niet. Zien we. Hij is innocent en zij weet innocent. Maar ik zei altijd dat jij was moedervrouw geweest. En zij was nog een man geweest. Zo. Zij zou wederkomen zeggen zo. Ja, ik ga het maken.
Maar ik laat die hoofd zo zelf af, ik kap hem niet af.
Zij moet mos. Maar wie anderen doen?
Die bak?
Apa yang urut ya? Bus pompa.
Wanita.
Good morning. Moro, hier aí pakimet zo itong list. Es muito verde, não é muito muito la carga igual.
Singa.
Doon ooit betaald cheap steken. $45 stukken, hè? Betalen over $5.
$500. Wow.
Dat is waar. Maar dit steken moet je klopt.
Hoe mij ook, man? Hoe mij ook? Krijg je dat? Goed mee.
Hali $800 steken.
Nee, $800. Ang bari din ng mas.
Nagreal ko.
What's war? Mas mama na is mo bro. Ito altijd op plaats. Ito altijd aan beraber talaga.
Dali ba yan?
Manner, option. Ay bari bahay naman.
$45 stukken.
Nee, nee,
Ja, maar ik zei je nog eens.
Oké.
Ja, maar ik
Ja, nee, dat is mooi.
Ja, man, maar hij is gewoon zo die dat is ook niet. Ik ga eens keer op WhatsApp. Dus je kan hier gewoon boodschap vragen, wat ik zo maken. Ja, ook om praten zo slecht van die klap. Zie je? Zie je toch? Nee, zo slecht van die is keer zo, dat is nou wat ik doe klaar. Ik vraag me over scholen. Ik is zo bedoeld.
He's a guy who says, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
For your service. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President.
License. Wil je iemand license?
I have a license, yeah.
License is er een.
Ik zou raden dat iemand mee hier mee wil.
Maar je lekker is je maar best wel. Hermen nog. Maar man had dan nog tot de hij reed kan ze geloven.
Ja. Kijk, hij is aan hun eigen weer zo. Hij hijgt vooruit toe met een wop. Hij gaat iemand eens haten, maar laat mij zo. Ik zeg niet, je moest gas woep, tegen woepie, nog wat zo ver.
Maar je loopt zo met jullie. Iedere dag kun je dat uitrusten.
Ja, maar kunnen we wel wat ik weet.
Islam.
Maar ik zeg lang is er echt nog.
Ja.
Zeg jij zei?
Ja, dat is lekker.
Oh.
Hoe werkt dat? Dat is een intern.
Oh, dat nice man. Hey bro, ik zeg, als ik daar aan elkaar koop, ga ik hem ook schoor. Volgens geloven is toch? Hij gaat nooit meer lopen.
Ja, maar dan moet je wel eens die kaart op zo, je vrij maar als er een eerste man wat moet hem dat een 9 kilo op die kar. Ja, heb je het film? Ja, dat is een wat goed.
Ja, genoeg lopen bro. Genoeg lopen, crazy. Ik kijk per rivier hoor.
Ja.
Hij moet wel een rijden bro met de jongen waar. Fair. Met de... Nee, maar bro man. Kijk hier. Ja, nggak itu di sana. Wait lah ya. Dia wait kan, wait yung bisa umid event terag suno terag no. Baanu gadit, oh yes indeed. Sim. Voilà.
my Pick and Pay, they know me as the kid who used to shoplift. Do you know what I mean? So at that Pick and Pay, when I walk past, they're like, "Where now?" I hope this time you come again. I saw Trevor Noah, even Trevor Noah. It's South Africa all the time. I wonder if we could do something. We could probably do something with that. He admitted it. He admitted it. This is What Now with Trevor Noah. For every conversation, he leans in. Eugene, I'm telling you, bro, we need to make that show. He leans in. Come on, gang. He investigates all the claims. What you do? He leans in. Eugene Kozak in. No-cut detective. How much? How many? Do we need to report these files? I thought it was going to be Eugene only ask questions of 2 words. How much? Yeah. How many? That's Eugene. When? That's when you get in. That's when you get in. Dan, welcome to the podcast. I apologize that you missed one of the days that anything can happen here. But I think that's the perfect setting for a conversation about genocide. About not just genocide, man, but a white genocide. The white one. A white genocide. The women's genocide. Which, as we know, is the West genocide. You know of which? How many of you committed to these? Me. I've heard that a lot of them. So personally, I always start my week with a genocide. All South Africans. This is what we do. You know, my father always told me, shut up. My genocide. You know, Dan, don't you want to say why is telling the jokes there? Now I have to reveal to everyone that my father was a white man who lived in South Africa and loved it. Damn it, Dan! He's putting the narrative, Dan. I thought it was like an interesting narrative. No, Dan. The first white man is also no, Dan. This guy, you were reading my backstory, Dan. Oh, no one read the book? No one. Everyone read the book. But okay, so this you know, this is what I found particularly strange about this conversation. A lot of the time I'll have a conversation with people and we're trying to like figure something out moving forward. I feel like for this conversation, we're trying to figure something out backwards. Right? Because I'll just put people on the timeline. So I know a lot of people in America, a lot of people in the UK, etc., are going, what is happening in South Africa? A lot of people are like, we heard there's a genocide. We heard that white people are being mass slaughtered. This is the whole, so that the whole world woke up. So you guys live in South Africa, I was in New York, then I saw the story start bubbling. So obviously I follow South African news. But you know the stories where it's like, guys, they don't come. Like ESCOM doesn't come, the story doesn't actually come to America. The story started overlapping. And slowly you started to realize it became part of the news, like international news, okay? Then it was interesting, international journalists stepped in and said, we want to get to the bottom of what's happening, because how could genocide be happening under our noses? And we don't know about it, right? So the BBC, CNN, you name it. Yeah, I was even getting requests, people were emailing me, hi Trevor, we heard there's a genocide. No, not say, because they're like, we know where you live.
It would be incredibly fun if Facebook asked you to check in as a white person each day. That would be very good.
But what was interesting was, as quickly as it blew up internationally, it dropped off. I saw conversations everywhere. One of them was obviously you went on Piers Morgan. You were in your house. And I don't know, maybe we start with this. Were you shocked, Dan, when you go on Piers Morgan and you're almost coming there to talk about the fact that there is no genocide? There's a whole panel of other people, you know, who are like half of them are there to say there is a genocide, and then they go, there is no genocide. So maybe that's where I want to start. Like, how is it that there's a conversation that's going all over the world about a thing that isn't actually happening? And I don't mean like it isn't happening like some people feel it is, some people isn't. No, it isn't actually happening at all. So how did it start?
Yeah, so I think that over the last 10 years, a raft of genuinely very talented grifters in South Africa have snake oil salesmen this idea without staying themselves on the last step. So someone like Rick Twist is very clever. He will twist the data and decontextualize facts to make it look like something particularly bad is happening. And then he will go on Jordan Peterson and Tucker Carlson, and he'll never say there's a white genocide. He'll stop just before, and then let people fill in where he's directing it to. Similarly, most of this cuck is taking place on the dark place formerly known as Twitter, like aided and abetted by Elon Musk. And on Twitter, these big established public voices who need to have a degree of tetheredness to reality stop just short of saying this is the worst thing ever, like with these race laws. They stop just short of saying there are more race laws than apartheid, they're worse than apartheid. But then they let the anonymous bot troll campaigns on Twitter, which are sometimes just useful idiots, but sometimes paid for campaigners, jump to the last level. So there was this X account called Totterboss, there still is, and Elon Musk reposted a lot of this stuff. Totterboss was just lying about a bunch of things. But what happened was the public figures did the groundwork to allow the lunatics to then lie on top of what they were saying. And then it ended up being Musk repeating and sharing these kinds of nonsense ideas all the way into the White House. And then when Trump went executive order time, that's when it became around the world.
Yeah, that's when it became.
Because frankly, I just feel like Trump and his right wing love a white victim. All of their immigration stuff in America is about being terrified of the brown person, terrified of the non-English speaking. They love a white victim, but it's hard to find white victims, guys. The history of the world makes it pretty hard to find white victims. But if somebody could come along and concoct the downtrodden, tragic, in danger white person, believe it in South Africa, and we can save them, then that ticks all of the boxes for that kind of campaign. And I don't know if you noticed, but it seemed like every single time for about 2 months Trump had a bad day, he then tweeted about South Africa. We were the punching bag to change the narrative, to distract away, to misdirect from the other stuff that was going on in his life that was dangerous. So I think that we were useful for that. The way that's like our diplomats, Ibrahim Rasool, and then Special Envoy Lucy Jonas, suddenly got covered by Breitbart News and Fox News. They were turned into these dangers because it was very useful to fit the kind of MAGA narrative.
Well, what happened 10 years ago? What did I understand? I get that we're saying something started, but why did it start? I'm still intrigued by the why of it all. Do you know what I mean? Like, what is the purpose of starting a campaign to say there's a genocide where there is none? Do you know when was the first time you heard about it?
None of the thing.
No, I'm being serious. No, but I'm being serious. When was the first time you heard about like white genocide in South Africa?
It was this year. It was when everyone caught on to it. I almost felt like I was part of living in another country because I looked outside and I was like,
That's
where is
crazy.
this thing happening? And I checked on my neighbor, she was fine. But she hasn't been fine for a long time. Many times. 4 cats, 1 limb. I'm like, what? If it was to happen, it would start at number 43. But it wasn't happening. But I get what Dan is saying. I think there's a lot of victimhood that's going on. And a lot of what people don't speak about in South Africa is the minority that oppressed the majority still claim victims 30 years later. That was a surprising thing. And I was saying to you the other time, okay, the genius of this whole concocted plan was for the former oppressor, who still oppresses some other people, to get an apologetic guarantee of nothing would happen to you. Where they've never apologized. They showed me how organized they were as an African community group. They have universities, they have unions, they have legal aid, they have everything. They speak collectively, but they've never said collectively. Even after when apartheid was declared, we are sorry for an hour culture, an hour indigenous contribution to the people of this country. But they could organize and say,
Can I tell you what I find interesting is I'll do shows like in random cases, right? Some more random than others. But let's say if I'm in Australia or somewhere where a lot of South Africans will come. And it's a broad range of South Africans. But I have yet to meet a South African who left South Africa during apartheid or maybe even afterwards, who says they supported it.
Yes,
That's about I have yet. Let me tell you something. And I don't even mean this in like that. I just go, this was a system that was well run. It was supported. I mean, you voted for this. I'm just like, where are they? Where are all the people you have to vote? I can't find any. I can't find 20 of them. Even the people you're talking about who are now leading these like pro-Afrikaner, and like extreme. Because I mean, we've got to be careful. Like, you can be pro-Afrikaner, but not be like a heavy nationalist. And so there's like a split there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But even the groups that are running far right, if you say to them, do you support apartheid? Then they go, I never. That was a terrible, terrible time. And I never said, even then, I didn't.
Tell me to give up. I'll never give up. So that fight fatigue and energy loss all day, every day. Eat your slop.
I had a picture of when you don't know what.
What the Rebonian trial picture? He was in jail for 26
Yeah, I'm just like,
brainy old picture. The one that you get at Robin Island with the suit and the party.
and they're like, I would have voted for you 3 times.
I would have.
Mandela was a great man. So I like this is the thing that gets me, and maybe that's what we need to spend our time digging into. It's going to be fun. It's like
The African accent.
no, it is a great accent actually, but it's like Dan, when you talk about like white victimhood, it's been interesting seeing how this story stitches across the Atlantic Ocean, stitches across like across the top of the African continent. Everywhere in the world, people have a story of being, subjugated, oppressed, something. It's the story as old as time, right? But some of them are like straight up just pillaging, as my friend Eugene likes to say. Big fan of pillaging. No, there's a lot of pillaging. But then there's a few instances where people were actually like oppressed because of who they were.
Systematic.
Yeah, like systematically oppressed, right? It's interesting how the label of victimhood, or like the cult of victimhood, gets to be worn most proudly by the people who are generally the perpetrators in these stories. So here's something I found interesting. We like to think of Trump as being an outlier, because Donald Trump is the one who rescued, what is 49 for now?
It's actually 59. I don't know why they didn't count it properly.
It was 59, right?
It's 59.
Yeah, I always thought it was 59, then people started saying 49 at the airport. Maybe 10 changed their mind, I don't know. But okay, the 49 or the 59 who were rescued, quote unquote. Yeah. A lot of people in America are saying like, oh my God, Trump, it must be so strange for you to see. I mean, like Donald Trump, it's not that strange, considering Bill Clinton thousands of visas, white South Africans, only just before we had our first election. Just think about it. Just think about it for a second. South Africa had just become a democracy. The world stage had agreed that apartheid was a crime against humanity. The whole world had done this. But just before the election, Bill Clinton's administration, not Donald Trump, Bill Clinton's administration rescued 2,000 white South Africans because they were like, hey man, we know that you were the bad guys, but we're going to help you escape from this situation.
That's not as about to be different blood as a blood bath.
But you see what I'm saying?
Blood bath was already happened. But now they're like, there might be white blood in this blood bath.
Yes, but there's never been. Okay, maybe I'm wrong, but there's never been. Dan, I don't want to put you on the spot.
As a what?
As a white.
Don't worry, it's part of my training. Every morning I recite the names of every white person who has ever died in South Africa. So you can ask me any white dead.
So let me ask you this. Like, maybe there's something I don't know about. Like when you are hanging out with white people alone, like because you live in Cape Town or you spend a lot of time in very white areas, right? Not good or bad, just very white. When you're hanging out with like a group, like when white people are alone in South Africa, do they think genuinely that they are being targeted? Like honest question.
I think that
Still being white.
yes, I think many white people do. I will say that all my friends know my politics. So they're on, like all of my friends are pretty much my politics. So in my friendship circles, no one is saying, oh, it's so hard, it's so horrible, it's so terrible. But I know because I run WhatsApp lines when I was on 5FM, which is a historically white radio station.
Yeah.
So I had breakfast show hosted, my TV show, the quarter report, and everything, that a lot of people do feel that way, but it's some kind of fear of the destabilization of their privilege. Because the fear is, as more and more black people become middle class, more and more black people become, like get to the same level of wealth, and then white people think, okay, but what if I one day can't get a job, one day he does this, whatever. And I wanted to circle back on this actually to your question of what happened 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I think that what happened was, South Africa had the 2010 World Cup, we waka-waka our way into our peak.
Yes.
Jacob Zuma came to power,
Yeah.
and finally there was a black president who was all the bad things that white people thought black people were about.
Oh yeah, okay.
That's what happened. The state capture stuff, the Zuma corruption stuff, suddenly the Rainbow Nation was popped. Nobody says that anymore. Nobody says Rainbow Nation anymore. That beautiful brand thing that Desmond Tutu, the Mandela thing.
Yeah.
And then 2010 happened, K9's Radio Flag was much better than Shakira's Waka Waka. We all know this to be true. But those two songs happened, the World Cup was incredible, we did the Dream Rainbow Nation thing, and then slowly started to collapse. Rampant corruption started happening, things started to fall apart. The whole country started to go, things are not going very well, but the many white South Africans had the dangerous black players terrified of since the beginning. And that opened a space for white grifters to then go, we're in trouble now. They can culture, all of this was fodder for white grifters to say, they're coming for us, we told you, we know the blacks were nice before this. We couldn't show that Thabo Mbeki was bad or Mandela was bad or Tutu was bad, but now things were genuinely getting worse. Here's the black boogeyman telling you this coming. And the Rama came along, all black boogeyman stuff, the terrifying black boogeyman, and from there it all evolved.
It's interesting you say that because you and I laugh about this a lot. But there's a thing that happens, and I mean everyone can be guilty of this, by the way. I think any group, you know where, let's say as black hanging out together, and you'll say something about a black person, let's say who's in power. So you go like Jacob Zuma, this guy, and then you'll find someone will step into that fray, and they'll say something where you're like, wait, we didn't mean it like that.
I know it's bad, but
yes, no, but you know what I mean. But they'll say something, you'll be like so much corruption. They'll be like, yeah, but I mean, what do you expect? They like that. Yeah. You're like, who's they? Well,
so are you saying a black person?
Yeah, no. What I'm saying,
black company.
What I'm saying to you, what you've revealed, which is really interesting, is black people have the ability to separate an action that is black culturally and the person that is black that is just doing something. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What I've noticed in a lot of these conversations is there are synonyms that are used for actions. So even when people are talking to Donald Trump in the White House, even when people are on the news or appears more, even when they're going like, look, there might not be a genocide, but a crime. Crime has become a synonym for black.
Just like the community.
Same as corruption. Yes, corruption is also a synonym for black.
The community.
The
townships.
Yes.
Like an all winking nudge.
It's another way to say black.
Exactly. It's like the way that Black Lives Matter involved is DEI, which is now so obsessed with. It's code word, and it's usually code word for the K word every time.
Yeah.
But it is though.
Yeah. But can I just say, as a preference
the sequel.
Yes, but I will say, just as a preference thing to anyone who's listening, I would prefer if you call me the crime than the N-word. If you meet me in the streets and you say like, look at the crime walking across the street, I'll be less offended. And then I'm just saying. What up, my crime word?
you can afford
Already sounds better.
You know what?
Now it sounds like you're asking for double. Crime key.
These crimes. Growing up, we always used to have this thing when people come to our house, we would wait for the moment when they leave. and then we all gossip about them.
Yeah.
As soon as they're going, remember, because look, we have our house back again. South Africans have never had their house back.
Yeah.
We've never spent as black people and we said, guys, let's gossip about them.
Yeah.
We had to make nice.
Yo, bro, if I had thumbs, I would snap.
What? We had to make nice very, very quickly. As soon as that ended, we had to be nice to the school governing body for the child to enter that school. We had to be nice to show that you're not like that kind of a crime in an estate, in a housing community. We had to be nice. So the ones that could played nice to be in those communities. The ones that couldn't afford played nice to work in those communities. We never had time to gossip as a family. So when it happened to Jacob Zuma, when we all said, hey, but that guy,
exactly.
And then other people heard us and said, that guy where? They were like, no, it's not our guy.
Yes.
It's just a guy who's doing wrong.
Right.
And then the whole conversation got lost and muddy.
Yes.
And let's not also forget, that people were 15 when this conversation started in 2010. They were now 20.
Yeah.
Joining the fray. And they had no idea about, because when you try to remind kids about apartheid, you're wasting their time. But if you say, now you know 15-year-olds struggle to tell the difference between Jacob Zuma and Nelson Mandela? Nelson Mandela is a guy on a note. Jacob Zuma is real.
And then there are so many people who I talk to. One of the things that disturbs me the most in my work is how many people under the age of 25 don't know what the TRC was.
Yeah.
So like if I was king for a day, number one, every South African has to teach matric. Number two, we overhaul matric syllabus. Because there's too much Cold War in there, there's too much, why do we do this?
Vietnam War now. Talk about the Vietnam War.
About the Cuban Missile Crisis. Who cares?
It almost happened. But it didn't.
Almost happened.
Ken, it almost happened. Oh, Lord, amazing high. You know how close they were, Ken?
Sometimes people put Guy Fawkes in the syllabus because it almost happened.
It almost happened, Dan.
It almost happened. But like my fundamental point is that even like I think a lot about how we only know the headlines of apartheid, settler colonialism, and,
yes.
and before.
Yes.
But even now, younger generations don't know that.
Yeah.
And in a country which is so systemically defined, even today, by all of that, people who don't know that stuff have an inability to truly appreciate the dynamics that exist within our country. And the only way to help people to understand is to say, hey, we did this deal at the end of apartheid because we wanted to find out what was going on. The apartheid government was burning tens of thousands of pieces of paper, the records of their evil. Some people made a choice that we would offer amnesty in exchange for finding out what really happened and trying to get some kind of closure. Some people disagreed on that, like Foucault's family, for example. Because right now, an inquiry is being opened up into why the MK didn't pursue court cases against some people from apartheid who did not get amnesty. They were supposed to be pursued.
Right, so let's just take a step back. So for those who don't know, let's just break this down for them. Because you're right, a lot of people don't know. A lot of people will be listening to this or watching this and going, wait, what happened?
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of the world thinks of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission as the gold standard in terms of a peaceful transfer of power. It is considered the gold standard of the bloodless revolution.
Yeah.
Right? So nowhere in the world, and this is true, nowhere in the world has there been a revolution where a minority who oppressed the majority gave up power.
And don't forget my cough syrup. Is it a dry cough? Hello? Don't take a chance. Take Vicks Active Plus. Unlike other cough syrups, its dual action formula relieves both wet and dry cough. Vicks Active Plus.
This is what other brokers are doing towards yours through high spreads, withdrawal fees, and small order execution. Receive it in full with Opta, thanks to low spreads, rapid order execution, and no withdrawal fees. Switch to Opta and keep more to yourself.
But then didn't see mass bloodshed. This is just, it's
No retribution.
yeah, right? And everyone looks at the TRC as the gold standard. They go, wow, what an amazing experience. A country that experienced so much trauma and so much pain came together and said, we're going to speak about this, we're going to air it on television, the whole country is going to be privy to it, and regardless of how heinous these crimes are, we're going to speak about it. And the key aspect of it is, those who come forward to admit what they did, revealed from the shadows, they will be given amnesty.
And that's if the evidence is proven to be true.
Yes.
Straight up to the grave.
And if it is sincere.
Yes.
So the man found, yes, because Tutu was very human about it. He was like, we want to feel like this is genuine remorse, right? Because like functionally want remorseful people, but we also, for the victims, you have to see remorse as or you're not gonna feel closure or feel like this person is really sorry.
Right. And so that's how the story was. Yeah, but that's how the story sort of ended for the 100%. It was, what a beautiful story. These people admitted mass killings and mass tortures and all these things. And the people they did it to forgave them, the ones who were left alive.
And then when they left those trustee meetings, the black people got into taxis again and drove to the township and left down.
No, but what I'm saying is,
I'm saying,
but you see that story.
Yes.
That's what.
And they drove back to their suburbs and privilege.
Yes, but I'm saying that you're adding to the story.
Yes.
I'm saying the story.
No, I
ends,
agree.
you know, like happily ever after.
Yes.
That's where it ends on, and then everyone cried, everyone hugged each other, and then everything was perfect.
I always say, to make sure that the revolution doesn't continue, you have to slow down of the revolutionary. One thing that's there's still the remnants of those people running private schools now in these former schools, that were called model schools. They have to make sure that these kids that were first wave to go inside the schools had the accent of the people that they were.
Valgam Deus,
But you are don't let anyone step into my world and slander your sister. I think when I was slandering that man a few years ago, I was like, yo guys, if I was here, I would have fought for that man. I would have fought for that man. I don't pretend it. Racism in South Africa. I think we owe Leon Schuster almost as much as we owe the TRC. Because Leon Schuster showed us how much was still buried in South African culture. That man could have edited out every K-word, every racist, every... That man went as an Indian, and people without being a person of color. Yes, so he went as an Indian, and then people like, blackface was no, blackface is in disguise, there's a difference. Blackface is mocking a person for their reason. This man went in disguise. He went as an Indian person to a white person's world. He went as a black person to a white person's world. He went as a white person, he did everything. But what he showed me even as a child, I won't lie, TRC was Leon Schuster for me was one of the most informative experiences I had about South Africa because I was like, oh, this is what's happening when no one knows, no one's watching, no one's looking. This is how they speak to their workers, sexual offenders. This is how they speak to somebody when they think something's gone wrong. That was sorry, but that to me, that was like...
Can I add to Leon Schuster before we continue? Besides, like, I understand, like, the optics of it right now feels weird. But as non-white people growing up at the time, the first time we ever saw a non-white person getting one over a white person was in the Leon Schuster show. The first time we ever saw a non-white person winning a situation, whatever the situation is, was in a Leon Schuster film. And yes, they said like Mama Bones is that way. But the pranks are flawless in my opinion.
The pranks are flawless. Absolutely flawless.
Yeah, so the integration and the mix happened quite quickly, and you come from that generation, you and I, where if you went to a multiracial school, a mixed school, or some other school, where your parents had a different accent than yours. But your parents, when they're moving around the world, around South Africa, their world, they don't speak more black people than you.
Yeah.
So that generation grew up. And then that generation sang in unison to the choir of black people like Farab, this age government is making us everything, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, there's many things about this government that you should say. But one thing, it's integrated and it makes lots of people rich who are not black. There's a lot of things that the South African government can do. And I always say, drive around in the road, on the highway, in your suburb, and see a car that has a plumber, a person that's an electrician, and see if there's a black name in that van, in that truck. So the system that people understood very well when apartheid ended, that there will be a lot of shortcomings when it comes to service delivery. In fact, the government itself will struggle to maintain their own infrastructure. So we will maintain their infrastructure and create businesses that make money. I swear now, the blackout that ASCOM caused has caused to have many more white millionaires in business than there are black millionaires.
From the solar business.
I don't know any.
From the power generation.
I don't know any black solar installer that I can call. But the same people who were like, this thing is rubbish. They were the ones trying to 50,000 rand to make this thing happen for you. And I'm like, yeah, but it's the same everywhere. Even the police are being helped by private securities that are owned by white people. You understand what I'm saying? And I've had this conversation so many times, and I'm like, this country is so weird that we can watch documentaries and see how blacks were produced by white people in the 70s and the 80s. And I'm saying, what's so different now when we move around forward?
What's different? The private side.
Yeah, but what's different? Yeah. Yeah, so I'm responding, but I'm talking about the guy that you're taking to because you're going to have to carry firearms in the first place. So you got to say that you think you are. The response is armed, meaning the person that comes.
So let me ask you this then. Let me ask you this. Do you think, because it's interesting to see these perspectives, right? Because when I listen to the conversations that are being had, and I see what people are discussing, I notice two very different positions that people have to take. And it's really interesting. It sort of goes back to what you said at the beginning of the conversation. I noticed when you went on Piers Morgan, black South Africans have to start every conversation with white people, you're not in danger. We swear we have nothing against you. We love you very much. We love you so much. We love you. We want you here. We love you. We love you.
Volgens mij ja, ik moet slapen. In mijn slapen praten.
South Africa's president had to go to the White House, sit with Trump and go, we love them. We love them. Everyone is welcome in our country. We love them. We love them. Trump is like, you hate the white, you hate the no, we love you, we love you. We love where the plane with you. Yeah, you even say, if we had, I wish we had a plane. I wish we, imagine that level that you're coming from, right? And these are people who, for the most part, I mean, you know the statistics, you know like a lot of the numbers, but if you look at them for the most part, those are the people who have less than nothing.
이제 만에 소리입니다. जो भाई को भी ना तो मैं उससे तो तुम भाई बना मैं तो अप्रूव है
भाई कुछ बाया लोग कुछ कर रहे तो कर लेते
अभी
And it was designed that way, right? But their role is to coddle white South African and say, hey, look, you're slave, but it's interesting how,
c'est plat au mieux que
very careful of this.
Ik denk dat was een zoon naar hier geboren. Nee?
I think it's because I never want to be in a position where people allow us to
die gaan een zoon gaan.
You know what I mean?
Maar het verschil komt aan. Maar oefen die zonen? Oefen die zonen elke dag? Of oefen je righteousness?
You know what I mean? Like things that and people are like, dancing. I'm like, no, guys.
Ze gaan zonig, ja?
Stigma that
elke dag.
Elke dag. Maar consciously en unconsciously. Is dat ook aan? Zo.
Die weet je, dat is zo'n
exactly. En dan is het, als je zo'n, kom ik zeggen, de rest van mij is het zo. Als je zo'n sociaal te leren, maar je moet jezelf
tempo van God.
Hier, kun je.
One of the wild
Maar voor jezelf liggen in elkaar. Smoking courses came.
Even how many people there were in South Africa, including
Wat er ook voor die kanker hebben?
Wat actually, 100% van allemaal erop krijgen.
Kom ik zeg, je kanker is nu nog klaar. Het is klaar. Die enhancement van het. Je longen is zijn capaciteit verzwakt. Je moet veel lopen of draagt je gewoon het te doen. Dat je moe. Zo je breekt je lichaam.
But a lot of people don't even know what was going on in that census. So what I do on the show.
Ik weet, kan je hier mee?
Guess how many white
Roker, wat je gebruikt is een paar. Michel vroeg om je.
Ja, paar.
Hé man,
There
Kaya
were
hoe sê is 'n roker wat jy gebruik het paar, 'n drinker wat jy
people
dose paar.
yes,
'n drinker sê nee.
it was in 1996.
At least
And there was less
Elke
tax.
dag aan.
Just to be clear, when people say
Die dae kom sê
Shacks.
at least
Ek rook nie.
ek rook en slaap ek keer nie om nie.
Company wide South
Of
Africa.
hy sê hy tikkie. Tik op sê ja maar at least kry jy mense nie.
Know that. And that's when I say
Bekragter sê die maak mense dood.
30 years is so long.
no, fucking not. Not when that is what you're trying to recover from. And I know that some people think that I back for the ANC, which I obviously don't if you look at all my material.
But your shirt says otherwise.
This is the Springboks and nothing else.
Comrade dead. Comrade dead every corner.
We have redeemed you. Okay, okay, now the time.
Revolutionary greetings.
We're going to continue this conversation right after this short break.
Something that's so important to understand about even looking at today's stats of how many people live here, whatever, is that if you know how bad it was in South Africa, to then see how much good Mandela's ANC did. The RDP rollout of houses was one of the most record-breaking large housing programs in history. And if you look now, they stopped doing it during Becky's reign, everything started to go wrong, and since Zuma and Trump,
Okay.
they did virtually nothing.
Ketel das.
Smoke it.
Van een stad met oor
But consider what
Maybe
it
come
was
out.
to about 2006. Unbelievable building from dire inequality, things so many South Africans things they could never imagine happening. And we need to know that. We all need to understand what was in that census in 1996 to get that in this rainbow nation thing, while the TLC was happening, that's the country that apartheid considered the only reason left us.
Well, you know what it goes to. And I think this is a conversation that a lot of people struggle with. People don't understand that there is a distinct difference between the apology and then in some way, shape or form, the retribution or someone amending or, you know what I mean, the restitution. Where's the restitution?
Exactly. And I definitely agree with you. There's a quote, and I don't know if you attribute it to, but it's,
You can just say they say,
there's I'm not sure they can, but so yeah,
Het is een rouwe man.
they
Het is een rouwe.
they said
Ja, maar
that
nee, ja,
South
dat is
Africa
wel graag
is
worden.
what happened
Lees je dat?
when
Of
forgiveness was
haak je je?
before torture was done.
Voel je maar dat we boodschap met hem.
That's why we find ourselves.
Het is een rouwe.
Forgiveness was given,
Is rou.
and
Ja,
that
maar zelf van
that statement alone speaks to every single thing we guys are doing.
Haak je niet zelf. Ik hou niet zo goed aan van morgen. Ik vraag je vraag. Dan vraag je nog weer.
But it's not just like even if you say everyone
Nee,
says
dan ben
sorry,
ik van de bij.
you know, I think of
Ik heb ook wel
some
eens heel gelukkig nog eens te zeggen.
you know, couples therapists went,
Wie is hij dan?
relationship therapists, one of the things
Ik vraag je
if you
hier.
read the books, they always talk about something very specific and they go,
Ik zit nog een sneer krijgen. Ik vraag je ik vraag.
Maar er
you're
nog
with somebody and they wrong you, right? So they talk about like infidelity. And I think like Esther Perel has in some of her books and stuff, they go, a lot of people make the
Ik
mistake
wil
of
maar
thinking that the infidelity ends when the person admits to it and seeks forgiveness. But that's actually the beginning of the journey. Because now what has happened is the person who
Meer
has
brief,
wronged
mate.
their partner has to spend all their time, and I know it sounds crazy, spend all their time showing their partner that they haven't forgotten their the transgression. It's really though.
The payment was, the payment was
like,
like,
like, wait, what? But think
Like
about how
the
many
payment.
times, whether it's on TV or in real life, you've heard people who've had some sort of infidelity in a relationship go, you know, like their partner brings it up and it's like, ah, this again. I already said sorry. It's like, yeah. You know why the person brought it up again? Because you don't anymore. And if the person feels like you don't, if the person feels like you have gotten over it before they have, they're going to bring it up.
Your example is actually really good because something that I think about is that white South Africans have never earned black South Africans' trust.
No.
That is another part of the post-TRC conversation. An apology is not enough.
Guys,
But I
white
think
people
we're
don't
sure.
say
Yeah.
that shit, guys, that shit used to blow my mind.
You have to work harder than that.
The president of the country, his name was Thabo Mbeki.
No kids.
No, nothing. You know what I mean? No, maar het
Het is diezelfde
People love Facebook. Ja, president Mbeki.
Eindelijk kan er middag aan gezegd, hier kan er weer vanochtend, maar dan krijg je weer.
They'd be like, ah, I can't say it. Then I go, but there's some tennis player come along who's at Wimbledon from this year, and they'll have a name that all consonants, no vowels.
Hands lower.
I've never seen these people struggle. You know what you like? So you can say that name, but why can't you say? Can you say Baruch? Can you say
ball? I will
But it felt like it always felt like to me it wasn't so much that they couldn't say it.
Fair.
It was like no, it's not even really bother. It felt like they were giving something up. Yeah. I want to make your sound. Yeah. And that's why genuinely, like when I look at my brother's generation, my brother's 20 years younger than me, my youngest brother, right? Yo, the kids that he goes to school with, they don't bat an eyelid at any of this. Making nothing to them. Genuinely nothing. Genuinely nothing. When I look at like young white kids growing up now, I can't speak for all of them, but I know from my generation already, like when we went to school versus the kids now, yo bro, these kids, so many of them don't see it as an inferior thing, because they've seen rich black, they've seen poor black, they've seen corrupt blacks, they've seen just,
they also had famous black people in their lives, which is a really, really big deal. It's like really, really important to understand the extent to which celebrity changes what we should bother to learn, do, and care about. Like the fact that young white South Africans know my and boxing chair, and they can talk about all of those things are vital right now. I don't know what
Just put your shoulder.
Americans, you don't know what I'm talking about this anyway. So Tyler's another good one. Just that, but you're right. People make the effort for their heroes, and white South Africans are black heroes now, at least some, and that it makes a huge difference to your understanding of what is worth and what effort actually learning to care about and do.
Yeah, but I think South Africa became a poster child for diplomacy. We almost had to, as a country, put our best foot forward. And the ones who could speak the better English had to stand out there in the world to go apologize on behalf of the transgressor. And two systems were adopted to ensure that that happened. Our government swapped retribution for restitution. BE is not an ANC manufactured program. It's an apartheid system program. It existed before for white people to benefit from government contracts. Tenders were not invented by the ANC. They were invented by the apartheid government.
Well, we thought they for every government, if we fail.
Yeah, but not every government
has a tender system. You're saying in South Africa, a lot of people think tenders were invented by the ANC. Yeah. The word entrepreneur did not exist during apartheid. Yeah, but entrepreneurs exist.
But it's like, what is colonialism and apartheid if not white economic apartheid? That's exactly what it is. And that's actually what I feel like more South Africans should start doing, is using the same language to show the comparison.
But can I tell you what it is? Sorry, I'll tell you this before you go forward. I'll tell you this. This is where I think a lot of these things actually start falling down. And I think it's interesting because there are parallels in the United States. For the most part, it boils down to marketing,
because of fear
and it boils down to implementation. Right? I think it was the way you said real G's would be silenced like lasagna. Yeah. You know what's so profound about it when you think about it is during apartheid, right? During any of these systems in America even, they weren't as explicit as people think about saying we are helping you because you are white. They denied people because they were black, but they didn't say to white people, we are helping you because you are white. So what they said was, hey guys, there's a system called welfare. If you cannot afford to buy food and you cannot afford to have a house, the government will help you. What are the systems? There's Medicare, there's Medicaid, there's healthcare, there's pension. What is pension? No one knew that. The government will look after you because you need to be looked after. Everyone deserves to be looked after. But then what you do is, they will exclude black people from everyone. So now people grew up in a world thinking everyone gets looked after because they deserve to be. You are a single mother, you are a widow, you're an orphan, you're injured, it doesn't matter. Everyone deserves to be looked after. Then what happens? Laws start to change, right? So in America, what happened? Now black people can go swim in the swimming pool. In American history, in South Africa. When I was growing up, It was
Huh?
that shit
Anne van
crazy
feest.
to have a swimming pool in your house.
Anne van feest.
I don't think you understand. Even now when I look at people, I go like, guys,
Sorry,
you know
I
you
never-
fly, you know if you're landing in any city in the world,
But,
and you look down,
nadai.
you don't understand how
Di ba iba
crazy
nasa same
it
yun?
is to have a body of water in the backyard of your house.
Kila ano
that
ba?
is for your sole
Ano ba?
consumption. Just you and your family have 50,000 liters of water
At your disposal.
for your occasional use.
Yes.
Guys, when I was growing up,
But,
there was one
maklay
pool
pa.
in the
Maklay
neighborhood,
so.
and it was
Di
run
katong
by the government.
skamag eh.
And everyone went there and we swam together, and then we all went home. Because you don't swim every day, and that's life, you know what I mean?
There's something about mom's touch. Scott,
Yung itutuklap kita na timo sa raway ko.
it's more than just my touch. It's
Wah.
this flavor. It's
So, di
this
ba yun
little
sa
gesture.
di ba tulong ka sa mga bas do na.
Stiffness. Good relaxing.
Yung uli na ito di ba sa bas do. Hindi ka ulo.
I don't know if it's but simply different. Whenever I find for me out, they don't hold me.
But it was interesting to see when they said black people are going to come to the pool, people then said, we're getting our own pool, and then what happened? The pool all shut down. I don't even think there's a, yeah, you're right. I don't even think there's a public pool anywhere that I know of. So, just one more week.
vừa nó khá là rất là phần nào có mà sẽ phát triển rất ít một cái phiêu của đồng quốc quay ra
About just now is one of the most extraordinary acts of welfare to pull people out of poverty was in the 1950s when the apartheid government dedicated nearly all of its tax revenue to pulling poor white Afrikaners out of poverty. And that was massive, massive welfare grants, unemployment grants, job seekers grants, illness and childhood and old age grants. And when I talk about white economic empowerment, and I'm talking in this way specifically, a lot of people try to like muddy the waters and gray what happened to the apartheid. So as I go, okay, let's go and look at the apartheid. Because you can't challenge me on that. It's on the record. It's not government policy. That is what they did systematically from 1948 all the way through to the 1960s. And if they were providing food parcels or if they were doing construction, whatever, they were only giving it to white Afrikaner companies. And so if you look at some of the biggest companies
wat ek op
today,
Kens ke maar, lig jy wat die slaapse
made
Was
to
it?
gain
It
office
was
power.
just a look.
Because further back to that European apartheid, in the 1920s, more and
Sterker
more
ook.
companies were hiring skilled black South African workers, particularly on the
Even
mines
food was
and around Johannesburg. White Afrikaner in particular, unskilled workers protested and strike. And in response to these votes, the apartheid government created, sorry, the apartheid government, the union government, made public works infrastructure programs. Like they built things, like that.
kaya ek het al die diere aan sê ek try om stem buite.
They made public works infrastructure projects to create jobs only for white
And
people.
in fact, that land was owned by the you know the Americans.
So when you're talking about America, what I find fascinating in American politics is that very often the left is a branded thing. The right will twist it on the same brand and make it seem similar. So Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, stop the steal, stop the whatever, right? In South Africa, if we started saying white economic empowerment is our history, people would go, oh, it's just like BEE, except BEE doesn't go nearly as far in the disempowerment of one group of people or the benefiting of another. If we all just started saying WEE over and over again, people would understand what apartheid's actual economic project was.
Kaya gini, kasi kita tekis ko magkukul.
Do you
Ang
need to learn
lagi
about
sila lang siya
crime?
sa
Do you need to learn about the aberrations of justice and the violations of
Eh, yang bayar kasi nila.
Yo, poya man ang kara.
economic superpower of creating white power.
Yo pro la ang mga
Think about apartheid like
Pabayang
that.
ko biso.
We would better understand
So profit.
the redress laws imposed by BEE now. Both work,
I like Bruce
need to
Bronco.
happen, and are helping distill this in
Yes, sugar.
It's funny
See, I-
to say that I was
Okay,
having a
t-shirts.
conversation
Iya, kaya gas.
with the gentleman in London who left South Africa. South African guy.
Terus ko. Siya, wadi mana kita dah puma.
Like, yeah, sugar, you know, I left South Africa, our family,
Itu dia.
and, you know, it's just terrible. I was like,
Actually,
yeah,
I wouldn't
the
know.
environment's really bad. Corruption, we can't get under control. We got
No,
to
okay.
these things. He's like, yeah, you know, it's just really bad. And, you know, and I just feel like, look, you know, and you know when someone starts coaching,
yes, sir.
look, and here's the thing, I'm not, like, let's be honest, Trevor, like to have black economic empowerment.
mana ni
What are you
leak?
saying?
Ja, maar het is niet
Come on,
leak,
hè.
why don't we just say start from scratch? Everyone's equal.
Hij nog vragen, kan me
Just
niet
start from
baaien.
scratch.
Ja,
And
Maar
easy.
die plek, nee, moet niet liggen. Zeker die gaan koppen. Waar je kamer?
Government says
Ik bedoel, ik heb hier een
that
brief van
black
de
people
die willen
or
meer,
people
die weg
who are Indian or
Wat
they
is
should
dat doen? Waar is
help
dat?
just because of what happened. My kids work around that. So my kid goes to school with a kid who's black. They start at the same time. So
Dan
they
moest je elkaar dat doen.
I was like, okay.
En die waren gewoon op een snaakse manier
Ja,
gedaan.
maar hoe ga je niet horen als je naar vragen zegt, dat is zo'n ding.
Die kunnen heel leren nou niet. Maar die waren, die waren niet dan.
Housing away.
Cresco status, let's go my man.
I'm going to ask you, as a white South African, to give a black family your house and your car and your money in the bank. Give it all to them, and you win. No, I would never do that. And I said, okay, but why would you not do that? It's not because I've worked for this. I said, okay, but now, if I did take it all from you, if I took it all from you, talking from the first investment all the way, if I took it all from you, what would your problem be? He's like, no, you've taken everything I worked. I said, yes, but your son is starting from scratch. So your son will make the money for you. And he's like, no, but I mean, do you know how long it took me to work for this? And I can't just give it to you. And my son had to pay for him to go to school. And I said, okay. So now why is it that you are able to understand the power of the
Als dat weer gaan
compound
weer.
interest and the
Ja,
compound
kijk, je
wealth
maakt
that
het
you
hier
have
nog,
acquired
je
for the
financieren met
generations?
veel.
And then you're unable
Ja, dat is een beetje kom uit.
for every black person
Oké,
who is never allowed to acquire
Ja, dan maak je maar van de hele tijd terug.
from their generation. Most of us,
Zijn.
imagine living in a world where most of us are the first
We been in it for 2 hours now
generation
man,
of
2
our
hours.
that ever tipped the needle above 1. Most black families in South Africa lived from 0, and all you did was, you didn't get to 1, you just did this to get to the next month, and then it was 0, and then it went below 0, and then you just tried to get back up, and then back below 0, and then you tried to get it.
Ik wil even een berichtje in.
Of the first generation of like excess, I would call it. But we're like a mega minority.
Can we want better?
You always want to want better. What kind of friendship is this guy?
After the first election in '94, that was the first generation of black people to stay and do what they like.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Just think about that for a
Stay
second.
and do what you like. And people take that for granted. And I'm always thinking
I wonder who was the first black person who just like wiggled.
so that, yeah,
Just okay, just like the first. Because no, just okay. Think about this for a second. We take this for granted now. We all take it for granted. There was a time in South Africa, not because they kind of makes it sound like everyone thinks,
and then also the color is
no, this is when there's color picture. There's color footage, color picture. Black people couldn't walk in the street randomly. If you shook the wrong way, you were taken away. You know what I mean? But now I want to know, because obviously there's meaningful things. I'm sure some people like.
Ja, dat wil ons op mijn auto.
Is this your...
Dat wil ons een plaats naar.
This is very specific, but I can see how hard you are fighting. This is very inside of you. His teeth are backwards. See how hard you are. And some people would like, some people would, no, don't want me.
It's made many a Russian men cry.
Because some people like, I'm going to go to school, I'm going to start a business, but I wonder, there must have been some black people who were just like, because I know we think of it in a meaningful way all the time, but you know how wonderful it is to be able to act a fool in life with no repercussions. And I mean this in like a
Mean, good day. How are you doing, Mean?
There was no comedy during that.
Yeah, we should know.
There was not. We what is it? They have the same rule of like the Bible. If three or more are gathered, then but it was though. They said it like how many black people were it? Once you passed a certain amount of black people, they said there was a political gathering. Inheritance.
I'm glad you said it was 1.5 black people and not white people.
With this guy with this shirt,
With undercover press,
with undercover. But man, actually, this is a good question to ask you. Why do you think white people get almost double angry with white people who speak out? Because I've seen like black people, but they'll just go, yeah, you whatever, you know, they run the gamut from you're delusional to you're a monkey, but it's the usual, whatever. Then when you speak, hey my man, let me tell you something, you make, and I won't say white people, in fact I'll separate groups. You as a white person when you speak, you make racists very uncomfortable. Uncomfortable is an understatement, brother. And this guy gets desperate, where I'm reading his comments like, yo, and yo, I'm like, hey Dan, yeah, no, yeah, my man. Yeah, okay. Properly.
Yeah, so I believe that one of those threatening things to a white supremacist is not a person of color, it's a white person. Because white people listen to white people instinctively more than they listen to people of other races. And I think that that is true of all different kinds of intersections. Men listen to men easily the way they don't listen to women. Straight people listen to other straight people the way instantly that they don't listen to queer people. It's a power. I think that if somebody has an agenda of trying to build a world in which black people are less or black people like this, or white people to all agree with them with, the most threatening thing to them as a white person goes, you're wrong. Because that white person can make other white people think, oh, maybe he is wrong, maybe black people aren't actually like this, maybe it's not like that. When I talk as a director to their project of convincing white people that black people are like this and they're great and whatever. And so, I mean, yeah, lots of death threats, lots of sometimes hilarious comments to be fair, because most of them online are not funny or intelligent, they just say dumb shit. But I was once called son of the soy, and that's objectively hilarious.
As in like soybeans?
Yeah, son of the soil, son of the soy, and I was like, you thought about that, that's good. Like you worked a little bit on that, was
that's
nice.
poetic. That's poetic. I like poetic racism.
You are my favorite hater.
Like poetic hatred, poetic racism, that's good.
Yeah.
I like that.
But I think also that for white people who disagree with me, I think some of them aren't doing the project of trying to convince everybody that black people are this. Some of them just have deep-seated, unacknowledged racism within themselves that goes like this. When I'm called a race traitor, when I'm called a race traitor, what it shows about the person accusing me of being a race traitor is that they conceive of races as teams. My team is the white team, Dan, you're white, you're on my team. And teams compete in sport.
Yeah.
So you need, as a white person down on the white team, we need to be working together to look after our team. If you say anything that criticizes white people, or heaven forget the Democratic Party alliance, then you are a race traitor, which means that you are harming the white project, the white team's attempt to win, and you are strengthening another team's attempt to win. That is a fundamentally preliminary racist conception of how race should be most important in the way that you build power and protect community. That you should sacrifice truth in order to protect the white team. Exactly. And so I think that with some white South Africans who don't like what I'm saying, you'll see in my comments, it's almost never a counterfactual or a counter-argument.
No.
It's always a personal attack.
Yeah, true.
And
they'll say,
and it's like, yeah, you're gay, you're a black lover, whatever that means. Like all of these different love. Love them.
No, but you know what I
Just
mean.
drive down the street, see them on the side of the road, and like, yeah. And the other thing that they love to say is like, yeah, of course you love Joe.
I get it.
Which obviously, yeah, like you like black women. No, black men specifically, because people love accusing gay men, they just like of being gay as though it's somehow positive.
Yeah, Trevor.
And then,
I don't even know what. No, I don't know what you're doing. What are you talking about? You hit me with that, and I'm like, I'm still trying to figure out what that is.
but sorry, just
Hey, super chat.
Cape Town was Togo conversation. So you said Cape Town very, very white, right? But predominantly Cape Town International is very white. South Africa is not. They're completely different worlds. I have quite often, I think very recently, critiqued the housing crisis, the LGBT crisis, some of the DA's decisions here in Cape Town, even in as though they've also done a lot of really good stuff and built an in-part world-class city. If I criticize Cape Town, it's the same.
Oh.
It's racialized. They say you're a racist.
Send those super chat, guys. Thank you for the super
Just
chats.
like you were saying earlier, crime means black. Joburg means black, Cape Town means white. You are criticizing us.
Why do that?
Our own day. in the game of tag.
But I guess the revolution has always wanted to adopt one single white person here and there to just kind of get through to the, and you might think it's funny, but it's actually right. So Slogo was that for the ANC.
Yeah.
Father Chaston was that for Desmond Tutu. So there was always one where like, you need to go with this guy. And when we started doing comedy, to get the gig that you want to get, no matter what age,
You have to have a white person.
if someone says, we will show up, we will come. The man, no,
You have to bounce.
that's hard.
People like Joe Parker, he's a white comedian who was having to promise white companies that a black performer was worth having. Not even like trust. He would have to vouch and go, I promise you, this person is worth having at your event. Please trust me.
And remember that hand holding that we used to start up? Yo, show up with you, make the introduction, shake hands.
You just stand on top of the road, just stand there on the side. Like literally, so we would go in for four.
No, sorry, I mean like act like a chef.
Oh yeah, fully chef.
Acting.
Because
Because
they believe that you are irresponsible and can't
Yeah,
yourself
but not Joe.
unprofessional.
Do you know the jacket?
Yeah.
You know someone come meet you in the car,
Yeah.
where's your...
Yeah.
Can you do a tie? You know what I'm saying? Can you tie a tie?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. So there's always that. There's always those stats that a person in 2025 can still quote fresh in their mind. You don't even need to go as far as apartheid is. But I always think people get lost in the stats. There's very simple stats in this country. White people are the minority. White people as a minority, they're the most educated as a number of people than black people. They have gainful employment more than black people. They outgun us. They outwealth us. They outlive us.
People forget to outlive, which is really important. In terms of medical health care, in terms of nutrition, in terms of a lack of, because early childhood malnutrition is what stunts so many young children. It's the first 5 to 6 years where you do not have enough food, and all of the early childhood nutrition research in the world talks about how people are physically stunted and mentally stunted.
Mentally is a big one if you don't have enough.
Totally. But I mean, the other thing that we were talking about around the Piers Morgan thing is the safest people in South Africa are white men because of all the infrastructure which creates secure neighborhoods, high walls, electric fences, good, safe working environments, good cars.
Firearms?
Yeah, well, sometimes firearms. Sometimes firearms. But then, and then the most vulnerable are black women. Because again, the least protected in the most destitute conditions, very, very often.
And most vulnerable at the same time.
Yes,
So-
and in all communities as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I always say to people, if you want to know what equality looks like, drive around any township, any black neighborhood, or anywhere where there's black men gather as a group, whether they're traveling together or going to watch soccer, and tell me what side pants they wear, just as an average between all of the big townships and quarter camps. Very small, very safe. That's malnutrition. You can't put them next to their counterpart who is of another race, especially white. And from muscle mass to the size of their pants, not being overweight, the size of their pants. Yeah, that's what tells you what the systematic system has been able to do and still survive and thrive under these conditions. Because of what they eat, what they know, how much they walk versus how much they exercise.
Yeah.
Because if hard work was a real thing, most black women that spend most of their in transit from 4 in the morning up until 6 in the evening would be walking.
Yeah.
So I don't buy any when everyone tells me, you don't work hard. I'm like, I know plenty of people doing well that don't work hard at all. And I know enough people just be on the highway and see who's in a bus and a minibus. And even middle class black women now are working hard.
Yeah.
And they're still working and complaining about being underpaid and having more responsibilities and still finding themselves in these situations. When I go to self-defense classes and I'm in a group and I'm usually one.
Are you teaching or you?
No, when I'm attending.
Okay.
And I'm one or two of 20, and I see how to identify a threat. And I'm like, hold on, you talk about me here. I don't see a threat the same way that my other counterparts who are in this training course see a threat. When I'm driving, I'm not as paranoid. I don't look around at a black guy crossing the car.
But you know why?
Yes.
You know why?
Yes.
It comes back to the flattening of people.
Tell us more. The flattening of people.
It's as simple as the flattening of people.
I listen to this podcast, I know.
I'll tell you what. So I remember years ago, I read a paper that was breaking down what was commonly referred to as like a racist stereotype. You know when people go, all Asians look the same. right? And so someone went out and actually did a study, and they found that to people who have never grown up with any Asian people around them, all Asians do look the same. Because you are unable to differentiate the features, and you're unable to distinguish them. So it's an exposure problem. It's completely an exposure thing. And then they tracked it between people, and they found it's not that one race of people is inherently unable or able to identify another group. It's all just about exposure. So, come back to South Africa. Black people were forcibly exposed in a section to white people, right? Because they had to work for them, they had to work in the mines, they had to work in the houses, they had to work, you know what I mean? But that's still a slither of them. Many black people lived their life completely isolated from white people. And so many black people, funny enough, can't tell the difference. Like, half of my family cannot tell the difference between any of my white friends. Like, if I brought you then now to my house, I promise you some of them would go, oh, nice to see you again. I swear to God. I swear to God, they go, oh, nice to see you again. And I'll be like, no, this is not him.
I mean, I'm a redhead, so it's not.
My friend, now just pick on that day in particular. There was something, what did she say something? Yes. What did you bend? Something to your hair, something, hey, oh, it's your jacket. No, and I used to be shocked. I'd be so shocked by how, like, half my family, when I sat with them, I went, oh wow, these are all the people in my family who were never exposed to white people. Right? And the flip happens. Now, you look at it through the lens of crime. Right? You live in a country where, from your birth, you were kept away from black people. You were not shown black people except to say, like, this is the khafar, the danger, the threat. Right? You were never introduced to black people. There was no meaningful interaction with black people. The country then becomes integrated. Now South Africa is a rainbow nation. We're all together, but we're not. We all know. So there was white flight. White people immediately fled to little enclaves where they're like, can we be safe there? And now there were fewer black people that they were interacting with.
I wake up and it's there, the voice telling me to give up. I'll never give up. Fight fatigue and
Copyright
loss
issues.
all day, every day.
Copyright wat?
Copyright issues van YouTube man. YouTube may ban
But now what happens?
Je kan iets wat
We're not
is
the only black people they interact
Kan
with.
die goed luisteren. Maar die
A beggar at the street corner,
soms.
and somebody who's robbing them,
The teller.
somebody who's serving them, somebody who's... But
That
these are
strike
not
me.
human
Strike.
interactions where you actually study another person's features and
You have to
look at
care.
it. It's not a space where you see the human on the other
There's no
side.
encounter, right?
Exactly. It's just like a fleeting encounter. And so, the one thing I think of, and I know it's like a weird way to phrase it, but where I feel sorry or understanding for white people as I go,
Dan is jullie nog het
if your only interaction with black people is when they rob you,
Nou benamen.
you will then think that crime is black. Because you, even apart from your actions, have been part of a system that didn't let you hang out with, you know, it's not that white people were allowed, you know what I mean, to be fair.
Twee namen.
White people weren't allowed to hang out with black people. And I always feel like one of the worst things that
It
happened
was also a crime. That association was a crime.
one of the strangest things about racism that we forget is, and I think I will attribute this quote, Ryan, was Nelson Mandela who said he learned in his time in Robben Island that one of the hardest aspects of racism, and this is not the quote, but basically he was saying is, I'll tell you when it starts. I'll tell you when the quote starts. Because I'm giving you the context first. He spent a lot of time at Robben Island. Pretty much all his time. And he made friends with most of his prison guards. And it got to the point where at Robben Island they knew, the administration knew you couldn't let Nelson Mandela or any of his cohorts associate with a prison guard for longer than like a few months. Because the prison guards started to see them as human beings and they started to treat them differently. Because Mandela would greet them, he'd ask them about their families, he would talk about himself as a human being, he wished them happy birthday. But it wasn't just him. People make it seem like Mandela was the saint guy. No, he was a human. That's what he was. He was just being a human. And the other people who were in prison with him would do the same thing, to the point where the prison guards went, what is he looking at him like that? Yeah, he doesn't seem like the animal that you said he is.
Because bigotry requires dehumanization.
That's the operation, a big one.
So no exposure.
No exposure.
Allows for dehumanization.
No exposure. And so they did that, and that's when Mandela said, in that process he learned that in a system of oppression, you have to free not only the prisoner, but also the guard. And that's the thing I think we never, like we really never get into. In South Africa, and I see it in the US as well, is that white people are also suffering from a system that was created by their ancestors. Because now I'm like, no, white people are terrified in a way that they don't have to be. I know this is going to sound crazy. You're not being hijacked because you're white. You're being hijacked because you have the car that the people want. Now you must ask yourself why you have that car. I'm not saying blame yourself, but I'm just saying the chances of you being robbed or hijacked are directly proportional to how much things you have. You having the things is directly proportional to how much you benefited from the system before you. But again, I'm not saying it's your fault.
The effect of the system is that you experience it as a race attack.
Yes.
You experience it as because of your skin color.
Because you're like, well, how else is this happening? It's not happening to anyone else. It's how you see. And then the people you hang out with, they're also white. They also got robbed. They also got someone kidnapped. They also, so you go, this happens to us. More, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, 100%. I think that's why even at that young age, I was very impressed by social movement after. I was like, this
The
is
movie.
Yeah, the movie.
Yeah.
It plays into the fantasy and the stereotype and great. They're angry and jumping walls and taking things because they are on the other side of it.
And the miracle is that this animal brought the baby back. Like,
Yes.
we never thought.
Yeah.
The miracle.
They do that.
Oh, wow.
You see,
We didn't know that Chris could do that.
Then cosplay is a reason. That's really tragic.
I don't know, right?
Oh, man.
It's very thick.
I bring my kid here all the time.
But yeah, you're right.
So there were those situations where there were more movies about that and series, and the incentivization to create stereotypes is very huge in this country, in television. And I'm glad now we don't have to mainstream television. But I'm saying in this country, everywhere. In this country, we live with full fact. You know, when I go to your ears and watch your TV, I'm like, you guys are not watching TV. You're watching commercials the whole day. In Nigeria, we watch reality shows that purport the stereotype of how black single women behave, about how taxi drivers behave, or taxi owners, about women with taxi owners, the people who are fighting for a home in the township. All those rhetorics are lies and happening in seasons get renewed. Season 10 of people fighting for a family home in the township. So what about...
So you know it's funny when you say that. I realize sometimes when you have these conversations with people, you just do this next time you're hanging out in a group of South Africans.
What, have 3 microphones?
If you want. Okay. You have the one but like, if you sit around and have these conversations, you'll see. If you sit around and have these conversations, notice how differently people respond when you include yourself in being aggrieved, right?
Yes.
Depending on the color of your skin. It's a really crazy thing. Yeah. So I will see a white South African say, and it doesn't always happen, but when it does, it's really fun. White South African will go, yeah man, it's crime, I don't feel safe, and blah, blah. Another white South African will go, yeah, me too, it's terrible. And then a black South African will say, yeah, hey, you never know when they're coming. And then the white South Africans will look at them like, I mean, they'll look at them like, no, but we're like afraid of them. You know what I mean? They sometimes they look at a black person like, no, but you can it's your cousin. You can ask him not to take your car. I can't do anything. I can't do anything. Think about it, my baby. It's just you it's you and your cousin. You're safe. And
White people think that black people's houses with virtual bars to keep them in.
Yes, but you know what? And I think.
I'm so sorry about this, man.
No, but you know what I mean, Dan. It's like, to your point. I think that's maybe one of the greatest disservices and injustices we did in our system. And by the way, I am somebody who's actually quite for what happened with the TRC. I know a lot of people have issues, and a lot of people go, it was wrong, and this and this and this. I think it was innovative. I think it was the first time it's ever been done. I don't think it's ever been done anywhere else. People,
not in that way.
Yeah, people always try and propose it.
Yeah.
But I think with any system or any idea, there's going to be the implementation, and you realize, oh, we could improve on that. Like a constitution. You can always improve a constitution, but its starting point
Especially that part that says South Africa belongs to everyone who lives in it. You want that part? No. Okay.
the conversation for another day. the conversation. No, so what I mean is that you can always improve a constitution. You can always improve an idea. I think the TRC, first time out, my goodness. What an attempt to mend and to bridge the gaps in a nation where people were separated in a way that most nations have never experienced, right? But I think the one thing we have yet to do and we have never done is gone, hey, what is that exposure therapy that people need? Yeah. And sort of an involuntary exposure therapy. Yeah. You know, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, Dale, and we were talking about how at our school they had a program where, because we were the first generation that was like, literally, you and I were the first generation, how old are you then?
31.
31, yeah. So we were the first generation of kids that went to school with kids of a different race.
Yeah.
Literally, I sometimes think about how crazy that was. When I go like, literally, the first year in my school, that there were black kids, Indian kids, colored kids, with white kids. That was the first time that had ever happened.
You guys were round one. You were the first child.
We were literally
all an experiment.
Yo, our teachers had never seen a black child.
Golden Herbal combines nature's herbs with golden science for healthy gums and strong teeth.
In front of them in a classroom.
Our parents used to wear the Sunday best. Your first drop off.
Drop off? Our parents didn't even know what it was.
I mean, drop off.
Live! Just think about that as a concept. I remember being shocked that when I went to school, kids were dropped off by their parents in a vehicle that they owned. Like one child got out of one car. Meanwhile, when the black kids got there, it looked like a circus trip. Where like one car, they open a door, and then like, you're 15. And that's how we just traveled around. The back of every buggy, the back of every van was all of us. You know what I mean? But that exposure, like our school had this program where they went, we want every kid to go and stay at another kid's house who they're friends with. They won't even like, they don't like strangers. Yes. But they said, hey, you guys are friends. But it was a deliberate program. Yo, it was amazing to see, talking about like exposure therapy, it was amazing to see how the black kids weren't particularly surprised by what they experienced because many of them had moms who were working for white people. So they had seen a glimpse of a white life. So let me tell you something. Every single white kid who went to go and live with a black family for a weekend, every single one of them went home and said the same thing. They said, Mom and Dad, do you know how black people live? And not in like a righteous way. Just like a child, like a curious, like a 14-year-old, 15-year-old, they were, yo, do you know how they live? Do you know how they come to school every day? Do you know that they have to take 3 buses to get with strangers? Do you know that they don't have hot water in the morning at their house? You have to make a fire and then heat it up, and then they call that out, and then you have to do it again for each person and have to. You know they don't have their own bathroom. You know that they toilets outside. I go to school with this kid. I see myself as his direct competition in that way. Yeah. But I'm going, how is he doing math when he woke up like that?
Doesn't hit the top.
How is he playing cricket with me? Or playing soccer with me? How does he have the energy when he ate like that?
And that goes back to the conversation you had with that guy in London about like starting completely equal from scratch. And about BEE laws and redress laws and justice and transformation laws. It's that exact conversation.
We're going to continue this conversation right after this short break.
Trevor, I wanted to suggest something though, because we've been talking about exposure, but there's something along with that, which is about getting South Africans to empathize with each other. So a positive example is the Springboks. If we all feel proud of the Springboks for like making South Africans like it's cool and like good to be South African, to be proud. But like ironically, one thing that quite often doesn't perfectly cut through all classes in a capitalist society, but does further than anything else create empathy, is service delivery failure. So one of the best ways for South Africans to empathically get together is to go fuck ESCOM and to go fuck the police. I have seen black and white South Africans ESCOM and ESCOM have worked together. Like, it's true, right? It's true.
Yes, ik heb
common agreement that the ANC has failed us in certain
He says people
Other
will.
things that, potholes in the road.
But can I tell you what I like about Eskom more than the ANC?
Hey, people, but the
Yes, it's politics. So what ends up happening is
They will have a
people
break
then
if I will
fall into
have
a
a
trap of making a synonym for black. Yes. So they go, look at what the ANC has done to South Africa. Then you go like, then a black person will say, yeah, no, wait, I'm going to start my own political party. And they're like, no, you might do the same thing. I mean, look at what the ANC has done. Then you're like, oh, okay, you're using it. What I like about Eskom is, it's this nameless, faceless power utility. And what it has done, and this is something that is like, it's crazy to say, but Eskom, the power provider in South Africa, has done something that has never happened in South Africa. It has made every South African experience the same thing, regardless of the color of their skin. This is the first time in our history when a black person and a white person can sit together and go, we have the exact same problem. And to your point, we take for granted how, it's sad that it has to be a problem, but it's like, that is something that is so fundamentally powerful. It's for two people to go, hey man, you live in a township, I live in a suburb, but we hate Eskom. We get it.
And those are the small victories that as South Africans we tend to miss. I mean, the biggest victory for the TRC was not justice, which would have been great for the victims and the families of the victims, but overall for South Africans was to see these authoritarians who were backed by the state machinery to decimate black people, being told to sit down and That had never happened. It happened live with everyone watching. Desmond Tutu and whoever was in the country and this is not live. You're going to sit down, you're going to listen, and you're going to answer these questions. That was the overall advantage victory for all South Africans watching. Not the fact that they point us to the grave. So if their protest was to wait fast and stay the course and not snitch on each other, well, that's for him in his grave, take two. But for us, the South Africans, as we were all watching, and we saw this mild man, Desmond, disabling them with kindness, but subtly telling them as well to sit down and shut the fuck down. For the first time ever, that was more powerful to South Africans than Mandela's fist in the air after wearing his wife's glasses, standing outside the library in Kenya. After pulling up the neck cathedral. So that for us, as black people sitting there all together, it was repeating the cycle. Was that brilliant victory?
Do you think it's not the same? So we're talking about things that provide unity and agreement.
Right.
Do you think that the largely black South African led, but many different race groups in South Africa, commonly telling the refugees to Tutsis and Tutsi was similar? It was like, you guys fuck off.
Yes.
We don't want you here. You're completely wrong. We all agree that you benefited by going to America off of a lie that we all as a country reject.
Yes.
We all as a country, we all as a country say farm murders are not disproportional more murders than all other murders.
Well, you see, but even
and there's no
if you
genocide.
pause, I think it's also, this is like something that's, guys, branding, man. There's one thing I've learned in observing American politics. Don't mess around with branding, especially right-wing, as you say. Right-wing branding is flawless. You know what I mean? Left-wing left-wing branding is not really academic and like ephemeral at best. It's like, what does that mean?
You need a slogan.
Just think about it for a second, guys. Farm murders. Guys, why is a murder labeled differently than any other murder?
Why it's genocide?
But I'm like, guys, there are murders happening every single day in South Africa, everywhere. They've never been given a special title.
Also, farm murders implies owners, when most of them are laborers or people who just happen to live on the farm. But the branding is wink nudge suggested that it is the owners who are wink nudge white.
And you write to add to that, robberies in farms are actually the problem. And the same farmers are not willing to disclose what is being robbed in those farms. As you all know, farms are not cash flush businesses. There's a tractor, there's a bakkie, there's equipment, but what else is there inside your cane farm that is worth more than your car in a state this big?
And it's also, what is it?
Firearms.
I don't know the stats of ownership of firearms.
They are expensive.
Yeah, they are very expensive.
Firearms.
Yeah.
The robbery is of the firearms. So if you have someone who has a cache of firearms because they cater to get that come from overseas, they can fly in their firearms, they shoot the cookies and the buffaloes. Now there's 500,000 rand worth of firearms and ammunition in a safe, and you've got laborers that don't live or that are registered to be in this country. right next to the border of the place where they come from. Just what they're not taking out.
Something that's also, I mean,
You're about the iPhone.
yeah, for sure, for sure. And I mean, the nature of rural South Africa is that very, very often a farm is the only place with any kind of asset value for 100 square kilometers. And everybody else living in that area are impoverished people living in townships. And that's just a crime story about class. If you only have one really successful high-value asset business in a whole area where everyone else doesn't have food to eat, what do you think is going to happen? It's like completely a class dynamic function happening in rural areas where the farms are the only places worth robbing because that's the only places of any kind of value.
Yeah, but I think sometimes when we say that, we actually lose part of an argument. It muddies it. I'll tell you why. So sometimes when we say these things, it makes people go, oh, so you're saying I'm only getting robbed because I have the money. Yeah, but I don't want to be robbed. I don't want to be killed. You get what I'm saying? No, and that's not what you're saying. I know this is going to sound crazy, but I think people need to understand. In South Africa, I would say it's two statements. Number one, crime affects everyone. You know what I mean? Crime is not going to discriminate against your race, your what. But to your point, the people who are least affected by crime in South Africa are white men. The same ones who are crying the most.
And by the way,
You know what I mean?
and this is my particular...
But our crime does not discriminate. In fact, do you remember that story of who was that guy who came to South Africa on a honeymoon and Shrine Devani? Do you remember the story?
Remember when you loved his jacket?
White guys in the township.
So yes,
Remember when you loved his jacket?
I loved his jacket.
We loved his jacket. I love this jacket.
Thank you. Okay. So Shrine Devani, story for those who don't know, Shrine Devani was a story of I think it was an English national, and he came to South Africa for his honeymoon, and then he was on honeymoon with his wife, and then she was tragically killed. And his story was that they got kidnapped by South Africans, or black South Africans kidnapped them, and then murdered her, and then he escaped somehow. They let him go, and that was it. That was the story. And I will never forget this till the day I die, because it's one of the darkest. It's like macabre because it's dark, but it's strangely funny, especially the further you get from it time-wise. So literally, South Africans were like, no, if they killed her, they're like, we kill you also.
You're the biggest threat here.
And he was like, no, they killed her, but then they're like, yeah. And in the same way, I say that it's like the same thing I go like, you know, white genocide. It's like, guys. Yeah, our crime comes from here we have democratic crime. Have something. Equal opportunity. Our crime. It's not black empowered, it's not white empowered. Have something, someone will try to take it from you. Now we're not saying we're for that.
Take it away from us.
You know what I mean? That's the reality of it. It's like we're living in a world. But I would love to go back to what you're saying about like the shared empathy. Is there actually a way that can happen?
What do you mean actually?
So you were saying like the Springboks, you know, like the national rugby team. I will say this is just like a side opinion of mine. I personally blame Bafana Bafana.
Yes, of course.
Personally, if you look at South Africa's story, our worst moments, just democratic South Africa, our worst moments happened in Bafana Bafana doing the worst.
You're engaging me too much on this.
But I'm saying Bafana Bafana. Look at it. But I'm saying Bafana Bafana.
Okay.
Our soccer team, our football team, guys, when it ends worst, the country, that team has an outsized weight on its shoulders that I think they need to acknowledge.
And Kaiser Chiefs.
Guys, you look at 2010. You know what part of the reason that 2010 was so good for us? Because we were in the World Cup. We didn't qualify for that. We were definitely going to be in it. 1998, that whole period, that honeymoon, what were we doing as the soccer team in the country? We were winning. Do you get what I'm saying? And I know this is a stretch, but I do think there's also an element in South Africa of when the rugby team wins, the whites have won. Blacks support the rugby team as well, but the apparatus of it is still seen as like, oh, the white institution did a thing right. When the cricket team wins, they go, yeah, see the white thing won. When Bafana loses, cry. You see those cries? Did you see how they were playing?
Yeah.
It's a crime that one. And I'm being serious.
Yeah.
And that's why I say like Bafana has an outsized influence on how the country sees itself. Many of my Brazilian friends have said the same thing. They go, when the Brazilian national team is doing well, Brazil is doing well.
Yeah.
When we're doing terribly, you'll see more protests, more violence, more everything. And it might just be confirmation bias, but I do think there's something to how the collective experiences this reality based on like a few.
I think it's a consensus decision of how we're doing, expressed in a very, very small representative example that makes us feel proud.
Yes, that's true.
It's like our very best are the best of the world at a thing that the world cares about. And soccer is the most extreme version of that. Soccer is bigger than any religion, it's bigger than any nation, it's the most practiced cultural thing on the planet. And we are a football nation first and foremost, particularly amongst Black South Africans. We're a football nation first and foremost. And so if football, soccer, our best 11, the boys, Bafana, our best stock are good, we feel good. But if our best offering is getting trashed by, or say, drawing with Lesotho, and no disrespect to Lesotho, but that's how South Africans feel about Lesotho. You see how South Africans talk about it?
Now, I want to talk about Lesotho. Hey, now we are going to shout. I can't out here. I get to work with the guy. I'm
just saying, we all South Africa, even back South African folks when the Super said they want half of the country back. We all saw that. Remember what I'm saying is, it speaks to our pride in ourselves, our own self-value, even if we are not ourselves. The same way that like, frankly, and this is both funny and not a joke, when Kaiser Chiefs won the Nedbank Cup first victory in 10 years, many 9-year-old kids saw their dads happier than they had ever seen them in their whole lives.
That's true.
There were 9-year-olds who had seen their dads joyful, truly, in a childlike manner for the first time in their whole lives.
Because that one is on the victory.
Exactly. And so
Terrible
think
manual.
about the kind of
Terrible manual. You can't get that.
yeah, one
They should have
by the way.
been, they should have made parents happier.
But what I'm trying to say is, when Tyler does really well, it does have a psychic emotional effect on how we feel when you do really well. It has a psychic. I do have a question. Shoot, sorry. I thought of this a bit earlier, but like with your success, it made so many of us feel proud, not just people in the industry, but South Africans going, our very best are at the level of the very best. And so we were all and remain deeply invested in you as a project, as a successful person. Charlie's John is the same, Tyler's the same. But what I've been thinking about with you recently is that you're almost like Captain South Africa to South Africans. You're like Captain America, because you are our guy who went to the world and showed America what it was like to look at America from outside of it, and you became the center of all of these massive, vital discussions about race and class and world identity and stuff. And so people expect you to be our Captain America, our shield, the one who defends us in the face of everything, almost has to do country duty, patriotic duty. People say, oh, Trevor must tell Trump that he's wrong about South Africa. Trevor must tell Elon Musk to stop doing this.
Yeah.
And I've always genuinely wanted to ask what that's like for you, because there's this weird thing that you need to be our greatest South African patriots because of how we as a country conceive of you. And I'm quite interested to know what that's like for you to go through.
So let me start by saying this. If I meet Trump one-on-one, guys, on site, hey guys, my man, I'm telling him, telling him everything. Everything? You, hey, us, hey, where the? Wait, I tell you that Trump will learn what this means from you. My man, Trump knows it. Oh, he knows it? Trump knows it. Halfway there. Those things are open. No. You know, I mean, you're very kind. I think, how do I think of it for me? So, the first and most important thing is I do not believe most of the hype, okay? Because I have friends who humble me very regularly. So, no, but on the real, as I go, one of the most beautiful things I've learned throughout history is how the stories that we flattened to sort of like lift up individuals are oftentimes a much more complex tapestry than we think. So we say Nelson Mandela, but if we're honest, the list of names that is in and around it is so massive that you're like, oh, this guy was not really like the thing.
It's in live and die by him.
No, and now I'm not saying Nelson Mandela. I'm not going to be like, oh, Nelson Mandela didn't do much. No, I'm not saying that. But I'm saying you forget that this was an apparatus. You forget that this was strategic. Martin Luther King Jr., another example. You know, everyone from his wife, and this is often the case, by the way, with many of these great men. The wife is the person who's doing like most of, if not half of the work or more, and their name doesn't live on in the exact same way. You know, writing the speeches, building the strategy, fighting when they were in prison for 27 years, etc. So I think it's easy for people to think of Captain America. But I'm like, yo man, the Wakandans made that shield. You know what I mean? Who's that vibranium coming from? You know what I mean? Who built this? Because that guy doesn't know how to make a costume. Who put him in that fridge? Who pumped that medicine into his veins? Who made him? The guy went to training. Who's training him? How did? So I think if you ever make the mistake of thinking that you as an individual are a superhero, then forget every little piece of the puzzle that came together to make you who you are. So I just go, I love football. So for me, life, football is an analogy for life always, but I go, the thing I love about football, soccer, the sport, is you really learn very quickly. You are just in a team. Every position on the team is vital. Strikers get all the credit. All the credit. Yo man, strikers get all the credit. But let me tell you something. Good luck being a striker to get all the credit when your defender lets you down, when your midfielder lets you down, when your goalkeeper lets you down. Just good luck on that. So for me, genuinely, and it helps me alleviate some of the pressure because I go, I don't take the acclaim the same way I don't take the pressure. Because I go, you can be grateful. I'm like, hey, thank you, I did my best, and I'm honored that anyone could think that. But at the same time, when someone's like, you must tell them, I do think it's funny. And someone's like, Trevor, you must tell Trump. And I'm like, my man, I would love to see the world you think I live in. I love the fact that you think I live next door to the White House. Yeah. And then every morning I drive and Trump is like, hey! I'm I wish I was realizing that first. I got sorry. No, I wish that was but yeah, I think
I just think it's an interesting thing that you go through in the way that South Africans see review versus what.
Yeah, I'm with you, but I also
the truth of your career.
I also find it's also semi-generational. There are many South Africans who are a certain generation who don't see like that. They just see me as like a funny mess. Like how people made it. Right. There's people who are older than me who go like, well done, Bafanas, well done. Then there's people who are my age who are like, my man. I've seen younger ones. I honestly think everyone has a role to play. And I don't mean this in like a kumbaya kind of way. I think everyone has a role to play. And we take for granted how much of an impact that role has. We all take it for granted. But that's something that my mom did. Like, man, and you and I have a similar story with like our mom. Man, my mom, I remember we like go somewhere random. A school that's got a church event on a weekend. So it's a school, but it's now church for the weekend. We'd walk in onto the ground. There'd be papers lying on the ground, like packets of chips that had been thrown away by the school kids. My mom would start picking them up. Guys, these things are infinite. As the wind blows, so do they. My mom would start picking them up. I'd stand there like, what are you doing? It's a Sunday, we're here for a trip. She'd be like, hey, wait, help me. But I'm like, Mom, first of all, it's not our school. It's a Sunday. Come on, man. She's like, hey. Then I'm like, yeah. And then she would always say, I'm not going to change this rules. Because everyone else is walking past this thing, it's not my fault. And I think we take for granted that this is where it's like difficult in life, and I think it's for all things. It's you and your personal relationships, it's you and your community, you and your society, you as a nation. Two things can be true at the same time. There's a duality that exists that's difficult for people to deal with, because sometimes we're fighting against someone who's trying to flatten it, and so then we become flat ourselves. So someone goes, there's genocide of white people in South Africa, and then you go like, South Africa is great, then you're like, now you can't address the things that are happening in South Africa, because this person is trying to flatten you. You want to deal with the corruption in the government, But you know, when you say, yes, there's corruption, they go, yes, the blacks. And you're like, no, you're using my acknowledgement to empower your racism. But I'm actually trying to work on a problem that needs to be solved. Do you know what I mean? And so I think, if you think of it in those small interactions, like, guys, white people take for granted, you said it in the beginning, G, white people take for granted how much leeway and grace black people have given them in South Africa. And not like a lucky thing, but like as an Ubuntu thing, like real levels of it. Real, and some of it is, internalized oppression maybe, but some of it is just like, yo man, we're still people. We're still people. And I think like a white person, the average white person takes for granted how their tone of voice, the way they interact with a black person, the way they, and I've seen the difference. I've seen some white people who think the person who cleans their house is lucky to have that job. And then I've seen white people who go, yo man, this person has been cleaning my family's home for maybe 2 generations even. This person has watched and raised my children. This person has cooked food for my entire family for decades. How is it that they still don't have a driver's license? How is it that this person who has watched us, they've moved houses with us, relocated their lives? But how is it that this person hasn't moved houses? So what has happened in our world? Because now if that person was a blood relative, I don't think you would be as proud of yourself. I don't think you'd be able to look at yourself going like, oh yeah, no, my aunt has lived with us for 40 years. She raised me and my brothers and sisters because they can but every day when she goes home, she walks for 10, 20 minutes, then catches a transport, then to another transport that takes her 3.5 hours to get home. Yeah. That's my aunt. Yeah. No one would be proud of that. Wouldn't tolerate it either. Wouldn't allow it to happen. And so
even the safety conversation with domestic workers versus the people other people that live in the house who are family members.
Oh man.
They would know how to protect themselves, where the firearm is, where the panic button is, who to call. But the person who stays there in the house alone, yes, apparently according to people, they're going to be violated. But here's my thing.
They are, to your point, actually to expand on that. And you do say this, Dan, I think it's important to hit on. Yeah. There are so many times when these farm murders are spoken about, and the same people who are going around the world parading the story, they completely ignore everyone else who also lost their lives in that same robbery or that same attack. Yeah? A house on a farm was robbed, was raided. The people who were 2 of them maybe, 3 of them maybe were white. The remaining people aren't even counted. And I always say to people, that's probably one of the greatest injustices that black people have suffered throughout time. Is that even in the worst atrocities,
Kasi klaar niet, kan ik
go to the Holocaust, Germans counted these people meticulously.
Wie waar vrij boeren nou?
The same Germans estimate how many black people were killed in those concentration camps.
Hoe sta je regel?
We still don't know.
Kijk in de camera.
The reason we know numbers from even slave trade was because of books.
Kijk in de camera.
Because of stock. Accounting. But not accounting of humans. Yes. Accounting of money. Yes. Itself. Yes. But I'm saying like that's and I think that's one of the big things in South Africa is like if we think of it that way, it's not saying to a white person be guilty. Don't forget guilt. Leave it. Forget guilt for a moment. Because guilt now makes it, then it's easy for someone to be like, but I wasn't here, I wasn't here, bro. Yeah, it's fine, my man. One day, it's fine.
Why do... Also, which part of the syllabus is it for white female teachers that teaches them in 2 lines? Tula wena, Rafa,
yeah, but you see that?
Where does that
But all of that, bro,
come from?
all of that.
What makes it okay for
Yes.
a person of authority to stand in front of a class where school fees are being paid and minds are paid and say those words without consequence? Tula wena,
Yes.
Rafa, it's not a shibinga.
But because, remember,
Where is the shibinga?
but that's my thing, is, she's right, it's not a shibinga, and shibingas are loud places. But in that instance,
Ja,
but in that instance,
You're losing shit
Yeah,
because
no,
it's sort of
no,
more-
Ik
It's
rakel
not
apa?
a sort of blackness.
Lagi kita
Don't
ber.
be back here, man.
Ayo bangga.
I want to
Ya, terus sama
what you
sama
said
itu.
about the uncaringness towards black there.
Ya, so everyone was
Terus terus mas.
everyone so.
One of the things,
Huh?
great things
Kalau siapa tuh
about
kata?
South Africa is that
Sila
the
kaya lost mo.
mainstream media obsessed over the white suffering and
Ako mo na
they
view.
don't have the black suffering. So I often say, if a black person sneezes near a white person,
Kasi kami,
it's
isang
a
so
headline.
wala lost mo.
Whereas
Mana?
many black people will die and it won't
Ni iyang vrouw ni papa, ni iyang vrouw ni.
So that comes from during apartheid, all of the
Mana,
mass
bro?
media companies,
Mana?
they're buying
Oh,
all of
mama,
the white
oh, mana
people,
is-
SWAT, apartheid, all of the rest.
okay.
But since apartheid, the
Channel.
capitalist incentive to continue to cater to a paying, reading, literate, uneducated audiences meant
Hij vroeg me even, was me even.
without reporting on black death and black suffering and impoverished people's
Hij vroeg
suffering.
hier.
And then it also comes
Hij
down
vroeg
to
op stand
something
ik
we
klaar
always
te
talk
zien.
about, language. Because if broadly the biggest media in the country and the hyper-commercialized media is broadcast in English and Afrikaans, it's just less likely that anyone's ever going to think, what does the Zulu community want to read about? What does the Xhosa community care about? Which often then means people dying, people really, really suffering. And so if you come to South Africa and you read our biggest news sites, 365 days of the year, something extraordinarily horrific needs to happen to a black person before it's news. Something unbelievably Tabo Bester needs to happen. See, we're about that. Exactly. Whereas smaller infractions, and again, whenever we talk about crime, as you said earlier, we can't debase it. I'm not saying that these crimes don't matter. I'm just saying smaller, less harmful crimes when white people are the victims become explosions. And for that explosion to happen for a black victim, it needs to be horrific. Like, think about how Thabo Bester never, ever, and there are other reasons why the Oscar Pistorius case was so massive. But Thabo Bester versus Oscar Pistorius, and I know it's horrible to bean count when people have died, but Thabo Bester, all of his victims, the horrific shit that he did for such a long time, versus the coverage of Oscar Pistorius. Reva was a white victim. And again, not debasing Reva at all, we're trying to do everything. But I'm trying to talk about how South Africa's media needs to change to care about black suffering properly. And they may actually find out that that's a purely capitalistic way, really good business. Because most people in South Africa are black and want to know about their lives and their lived experience.
You know what Dan is saying is absolutely true, and I even go a step further and say in a systematic way that the media has kept a black majority that is influential and exposed to technology busy and distracted. Because every time something happens, something else happens in the pipeline that kind of distracts us from this whole thing. For example, as black people, we are forced to always take the moral high ground and things like apartheid, we are imposing as an emotional control. It wasn't me, it wasn't system, now you guys are in school. Yes, but I'm like, no, now you're expecting me to cure something that was caused by a system with my emotions. So how about a system gets created to cure what that system managed to do? So we need a systematic problem, systematic solution for a systematic problem. Deal with my emotions and spend my time the way I like. But the fact that we are always distracted, and when something happens, people go to a country and support whatever they support. Then we look at our local economy and politics, something seismic always happens right in the middle of that. And I'm going, we're such a small country that kind of manipulation can happen.
Totally. And what I want to add to that, looping back to the TRC, is one of the terrible things about the TRC that the country is constantly being distracted away from, is that many victims were awarded financial restitution and have not got it yet.
Well, you look it up. I'm done now then.
Yeah. And every single year, the remaining people who were awarded financial compensation awarded this and they haven't received it. And many of them have died now. And every year they get together and they demand from the Justice Department, where is our money? And they're dying. And the TRC, you were talking about how the first phase was beautiful, but since then, people who were not given amnesty have not been charged. Inquiries are now being opened, but it's 2025. The credit has been long dead in the ground. And only now that case is being investigated, when in the early 2000s, those were the people who were supposed to be investigated first. And thousands of people who were awarded, victims who were awarded financial compensation from the TRC are still begging the government to give them the money that they should have got in like 2002. but we are so distracted as a country that that doesn't make